Miranda Fenner was born on December 26, 1979 in the California city of Sacramento. She lived there with her parents and younger brother, but when the girl was 10, the family decided to move to another state. They settled in the small town of Laurel, Montana. Miranda's parents chose this place because their close relatives lived there. In addition, they wanted to live in a quiet and peaceful place with a low crime rate and a friendly community. Despite the fact that the girl had to start life in a new place from scratch, she very quickly found friends and joined the team. Miranda also enjoyed spending time with her grandparents, who lived in the city. In high school, she decided that she wanted to work with children and thought about what profession in this direction she should choose. According to her relatives, Miranda has been a kind and sympathetic person since childhood, striving to help other people. But immediately after graduating from school, an accident occurred with the girl, because of which Miranda had to postpone her plans. When she was 18 years old, she was involved in a serious car accident that caused her to break her neck. For the next few months, she was forced to stay at home with a special neck collar and could hardly do anything. Fortunately, the rehabilitation took place quite quickly, and after 3 months of treatment, Miranda was able to recover. Although this accident left indelible consequences for her health, the girl could finally come back to life. In early autumn, she found a temporary job. Miranda got a job in a videotape rental store. It was a fairly simple and interesting job, so the girl was very happy. In addition, right in front of the establishment was a small motel owned by her grandparents. Therefore, Miranda could often go to see them. Despite the fact that the girl most often worked alone and closed the store late in the evening, her parents weren't worried that anything might happen to her. Firstly, Laurel was a very safe city with extremely low crime, and secondly, her house was only a short drive away. However, on November 15, 1998, everything changed. It was the usual quiet Sunday. Miranda talked with customers and also sorted out old Disney posters. She called her uncle and asked if she needed to leave any of them for his children. Later, she called her mom to chat with her. It was about 7 in the evening and there were fewer and fewer customers. Miranda told her that she had filled out applications to various colleges and was going to send them out soon. Despite the fact that the girl has long wanted to work with children, recently she discovered a new hobby: art. She liked to draw, and she began to think about getting an education in this direction. The woman was happy for her and said that she would support any decision about further studies. At approximately 8 p.m., 2 men drove past Miranda's shop on their way back from fishing. Once in front of the establishment, they immediately noticed an alarming picture. Near the door of the store lay a girl covered in blood. The men immediately called an ambulance, and the doctors arrived at the scene. A few minutes later, they found that the girl was alive. However, her pulse was very weak. For this reason, they decided not to take her to the hospital by car, but called a medical helicopter. Doctors hoped that this would help save the girl. At the same time that doctors were waiting for the helicopter, Miranda's younger brother arrived past the store. Seeing that something had happened there, he immediately went home and told his parents about it. When his father rushed to the scene, the girl had already taken the helicopter. However, there were many police officers on the scene who told the man that his daughter had been the victim of a brutal attack. Immediately after that, the girl's parents rushed to the hospital, located in the neighboring large city of Billings. They drove at great speed and even managed to get there before the helicopter. Unfortunately, shortly after Miranda's arrival, doctors pronounced her dead. Experts found that the girl was stabbed in the neck, because of which she lost a lot of blood. In addition, a wound was found on her hand, which was classified as protective. According to them, the attack took place between 8:30 and 8 in the evening. That is, almost immediately after Miranda finished talking to his mother on the phone. In the meantime, the police examined the crime scene. The first thing that caught their eye was a trail of blood that led from the opposite end of the store to the street through the front door. It was obvious that after the attack, Miranda covered all this distance trying to get out. Unfortunately for her, there was no one on the street at the time. The police also noticed that the back door of the store was ajar. They admitted that the killer came out through it. It is noteworthy that just a few minutes before the discovery of Miranda, a patrolman drove past her store. He was investigating a chain of robberies that have occurred in the city in recent months. Near the video rental building, he saw a dark sedan. However, at that time, the policeman did not attach any importance to this, since the car did not fit the description of the one on which the robbers moved. Investigators also admitted that this car could belong to Miranda's killer. According to detectives, the attackers tied the girl's legs in the back of the store and then killed her. They also found that a small amount of cash was missing from the cash register, so they assumed that the motive was robbery. Nevertheless, given the cruelty with which the offender dealt with the victim, they were in no hurry to rule out personal motives. Over the next few days, forensic experts collected more than 100 different fingerprints and thousands of hairs in the store. Considering that a lot of people came to the room every day, it was extremely difficult for them to abstract all this from possible biological samples of the killer. Given the complete lack of evidence, the investigation did not yield any significant results. This case was not like an ordinary robbery, because in the vast majority of cases, criminals do not commit such atrocities to the victim. In addition, Miranda's mother said that shortly before the incident, they just had a conversation about robberies. The girl then said that without hesitation, she would give the criminal all the money, since they are not worth dying. This added even more questions as to why the killer had dealt with her. In the weeks that followed, Miranda's relatives and dozens of concerned residents staged a memorial event outside the store, and they also managed to raise $18,500, which was offered as a reward for information about the killer. Most of this money was sent to the victim's parents by sympathetic people, and $5,000 was donated by the owner of the video rental. Despite the complete lack of evidence, the police worked on this case in 2 shifts, dealing with it 24 hours a day. For the residents of Laurel, who are not used to murder, the incident was a big shock, and they wanted those responsible to be punished. Over the following months, investigators interviewed more than 800 people, and also turned to FBI profilers for help. They even checked all the robberies in neighboring cities, but all this did not bring results. Over time, Miranda's parents raised the reward for information to $25,000, hoping that this would help solve the case. The main problem was that they didn't have any useful evidence. Police collected prints, hair, and other materials belonging to hundreds of visitors to the store. However, whether there was anything among this that belonged to the killer remained unknown. Since then, there has been no major progress in this matter. In 2000, information surfaced that a certain perpetrator, shortly before his death, stated that he was related to the murder of Miranda. Investigators checked this information, but concluded that this statement was not true. In the years that followed, Miranda's case was covered several times in major television broadcasts on unsolved cases. Each time, this led to the fact that the police began to receive new calls with tips. However, one of them did not bring the detectives closer to the solution. In 2012, the local police department referred the case to the Billings Unsolved Crime Unit. The new detectives re-examined all available information, but they failed to make any progress. It is noteworthy that for all the years of investigation, as many as 10 people turned to the police, who confessed to the murder of Miranda. Each time the detectives carefully checked their stories, but in each case, they found evidence that these people were lying. It is not entirely clear why they did this. However, the fact remains that this is found in almost every high-profile case, and the police are already accustomed to such fake confessions. There was no serious progress for several more years, until something unexpected happened in 2017. A man came to the police department and asked to speak to the chief detective. When given the opportunity, the man said he wanted to confess to a crime that occurred a few months before Miranda's death. On September 5, 1988, a woman from Billings was finishing her morning shift. She was delivering newspapers in a residential area of the city and was about to go home. At one point, she heard footsteps behind her, and the next second, she was hit on the head. An unknown man dragged her to a nook between 2 houses, abused her, and stabbed her several times in the neck. The woman decided to try to deceive the offender and pretended to die, after which the attacker fled the place. The victim managed to return to the street, where she was noticed and an ambulance was called. She survived and was even able to give the police a rough description of the attacker. At the crime scene, they also found a used contraceptive, which, handed over to experts, later they managed to extract the DNA profile of the criminal, but there were no matches in the database. This is also suspended for many years, despite the presence of biological material of the criminal, and only 19 years later, the alleged offender himself came to the police and stated that he was the attacker. This man turned out to be Zachary O'Neill, who was 18 years old at the time of the crime. According to his story, he was just walking down the street, saw this woman and decided to abuse her. Fearing that she would be able to identify him, he stabbed her several times and thought she was dead. Only a few days later, he read in the newspaper that the woman had survived, and here the detectives found something else. In 2013, they received a tip from a woman in the case of the murder of Miranda. She said that she suspected her husband's son, who in those years lived in Laurel with his father and his biological mother. That son was Zachary, and there were several reasons why the woman suspected him. First, the young man was very problematic and aggressive. He used heavy illegal substances, and sometimes the woman feared that he could harm her in a fit of rage. Secondly, her husband told her that on the very day of Miranda's murder. Zachary brought home some rented cassettes. Given that the town was small, there was only one film rental establishment, and he had to take these cassettes from Miranda's store. However, in 2013, this tip did not help detectives, because there was not a single piece of evidence against Zachary. In addition, the police did not regard the information received as significant, since all this did not even indirectly indicate his guilt. But after Zachary confessed to assaulting another woman, he suddenly stated that he was also involved in Miranda's murder. According to him, on that Sunday he went to the store and rented 4 cassettes, 3 for his mother and 1 erotic content for himself. When he returned home, his mother found a 4th cassette tape with intimate content and demanded that it be returned. Zachary went back to the store and decided to rob him along the way. He said he was heavily addicted to illegal substances at the time and needed money to buy them. What's more, he was also under the influence of drugs that evening. Returning to the store, he waited for other customers to come out, after which he took out a pistol and demanded that Miranda give him all the money and cassettes. There was a very small amount of money. The girl immediately handed over the cash to the criminal, after which Zachary took Miranda to the back of the store and tied her up. The young man planned to leave her there so that she would not immediately call the police, but in the process he began to worry that the girl would remember his appearance and give the police a description. As a result, he took out a hunting knife and stabbed Miranda several times in the neck, after which he fled. A few days later, he threw the knife away in the mountains of Montana, where he and his father went hunting. It is noteworthy that Zachary repeatedly got into the police from a young age, but replacing serious crimes. For example, a few months before the attack on a woman in Billings, he and 2 other guys snuck into someone else's house, stole alcohol, a car, and several dozen elements of firearms. The guy did not receive any serious punishment. However, this crime remained in his file. Despite this, after a tip in 2013, the police still did not begin to check in detail his involvement in the murder of Miranda. The detectives were surprised that Zachary himself came to them and confessed to 2 serious crimes. He himself explained this by the fact that all these years his conscience tormented him. He was ashamed of what he had done, and he was constantly thinking about taking his own life. Zachary added that the guilt only intensified after he abused several more women in the following years. Despite everything the man said, the detectives were in no hurry to take his word for it. As we remember, before him, as many as 10 people confessed to the murder of Miranda, and all of them turned out to be liars. The police admitted that Zachary could be another, so they decided to release him into the wild. However, they immediately began to check his story. A DNA sample was taken from the man, and the first thing they compared it with the sample found in the contraceptive after the attack on another woman. The result showed a complete coincidence, and the detectives realized that Zachary really did not lie. The man was arrested for the first crime, and the police began to try to link him to the murder of Miranda. It was much more difficult to do this than in the previous case. The girl was not subjected to violence, and thousands of samples of various pieces of evidence were found in the store, which could not be related to the crime at all. This was a big problem because, under state law, a person could not be convicted on the basis of a confession alone. Serious clues were needed that linked him to the case, and detectives spent the next 2 years searching for them. Fortunately, they had plenty of time, since Zachary was already in custody, and the police could work on the case with the utmost scrupulousness. In the course of this process, they found out that other omissions had been made during the investigation, in addition to the fact that the man was not thoroughly checked in 2013. Detectives learned that Zachary's mother's account was opened on Miranda's work computer. Apparently, the girl opened it to return the cassette of erotic content, because then the young men used their mother's account. But for some reason, this clue was not given any importance. It turned out that Zachary was among the 800 people who were interrogated by the police. But then he said that he had nothing to do with this case. At the same time, he continued to commit various crimes, such as theft and assault on women, but he almost always managed to avoid punishment. Sometimes his actions were devoid of even minimal meaning. One day he just walked up to a woman on the street, punched her in the face, and ran away. The detective was never able to find direct evidence linking him to the murder of Miranda. However, in 2 years, they collected an impressive set of circumstantial ones, which, together with the confession, had enough weight for a guilty verdict. This included his crimes in the months before and after the murder, including violence against several women and theft. In addition, his mother's public account on the victim's work computer proved that Zachary was the last visitor Miranda saw before her death. In addition to this, the police said that in his confession, the man gave them several facts about this murder, which was never disclosed. All this was enough for the court, and Zachary himself agreed to plead guilty. As a result, the man received a life sentence for the murder of Miranda, as well as 2 more life sentences for other crimes. In his final remarks, he addressed Miranda's relatives and said he was very sorry for his actions. Zachary also expressed hope that his confession will help them cope with this tragedy. Despite his remorse, the victim's parents said that they would only be satisfied with the death sentence. In their opinion, after all he had done, Zachary did not deserve the right to live a full life, even in prison. Share your opinion about this story in the comments, and don't forget to like it if you liked the video. Thanks for watching.